Good morning, Scott Cullen with the Canada Report here. It's time once again for Fridays with Frank. And Frank is joined this morning by a very special guest. And Frank, I'm just going to turn it over to you and you can handle all the introductions from here.
Okay, Scott, thank you very much for that. Yes, we are very, very pleased and very fortunate to have a dear friend, Jennie Fisher, Senior Vice President and General Manager, Office Equipment Division for GreatAmerica. We've shared a lot of business occasions with Jennie, and it's always been, aside from work, it's always been a lot of fun. So, Jennie, how are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good, Frank.
Yeah, you ready to rock and roll here?
Ready to rock and roll.
All right. When did you start with GreatAmerica?
Believe it or not, next week is my 30th anniversary. Sometimes it feels a little strange saying that, right? Because
Congratulations.
Wow, 30 years seems like a long time, but it has flown by for sure.
You know, going back 30 years, I started long before that. And for me, and I think we've shared this with each other, it was very different business 30, 40 year ago. What was some of the things that you had to contend with starting out as a woman in a industry that really didn't give women much thought as business participants or partners?
Yeah, well, so honestly, I never gave it much thought myself until I really got out in the field and started spending more time in dealers' offices, right, and at the association meetings. And that's when it really became apparent that there's not a lot of women leaders out there. How did I contend with that? I will tell you that a lot of times people say, how do you use being a woman to your advantage? And I think that I did a pretty decent job of that, because while at times I would feel intimidated, I always tried to relax myself by saying, you know what, they're no different than I am, right? We all put our pants on the same way each day, one leg at a time. And I have values that I can share with them, and they have values that they can share with me. And so I just remained very inquisitive. I'm inquisitive by nature. And I really used the opportunity to get to know a lot of these gentlemen by asking them questions about their experience and their knowledge, right? And all of it was really good for me because it helped me become more knowledgeable and experienced in working for a finance company in sales at the time, and then becoming director of marketing and then on to the general manager. And by doing that, a lot of them kind of took me under their wing and would reach out to have conversations, right? If they wanted to learn something on the finance side, or they thought of something that they would want to share with me. And that still happens today. And I really value those opportunities.
What was your first job with GreatAmerica?
My first job with GreatAmerica when I came in, was really admin and marketing. At the time, we were a fairly new company and fairly small. And so really I did pretty much everything I needed to do to keep the lights on and help keep the company running. But for the most part, really the admin, doing RFPs for Tony and Doug to go to market to obtain funding, and then more of the marketing pieces and sales admin, if you will, supporting the sales folks.
So at what point did you start going out in the field?
I moved into sales probably, it was about 2.5 years after I started at GreatAmerica on the sales assistant side, and then became a rep about a year later. And so let's say 26 years ago, I've been out there traveling and making the rounds.
Were you assigned any specific geography? Did you have to work in certain areas?
I did, yeah. We called it the Southeast. So primarily my states were Missouri, Tennessee, Kentucky, if you will. Florida. Florida was the biggest state.
Sure.
So my travel primarily at that time revolved around visiting dealerships in the geographic region.
Right.
When I became the director of marketing and VP of marketing is when I started to get out in the industry more. And that's when I had the opportunity and the pleasure of meeting you and Carol and CJ, as well as many other industry partners, and expanded my exposure to dealers across the nation.
Yeah, well, I remember meeting you. Yeah, as far as I could see, you held a fairly senior position when we first met. And I don't recall, but you're saying was director of marketing.
It was VP of marketing at the time, yeah.
Yeah, VP of marketing, yeah. How long did it take you to get there? I mean, you know, it's you come into a tough industry, a startup company almost, and both of you move up. You seem to have moved up pretty quickly.
Let me see. So director of marketing, that would have been probably, or VP of marketing. I was a sales rep, I think, for 5 years before I moved into the marketing side. And in that meantime, I also held, let me back up a little bit. So I was a sales rep, and then I moved into sales leadership for a period of time. And then, as well as sales leadership, I became a team leader and went through a rotation at GreatAmerica, which really contributed to my development of becoming a more senior leader as well.
Well, let's assume for a moment you're at the Canada Women's Brunch, and you've got all the ladies like yourself who are senior executives for the various companies. And Carol said to you, Jenny, why don't you get up there and talk about what are the things that you felt you have done to gain acceptance in the industry as a woman?
First of all, don't be afraid, right? Don't be intimidated. And sometimes I become intimidated by women. I'm not saying it's men, okay? I think we're all that, depending on the nature of the person and the title of the person, sometimes can do that. But I would say don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to share the value that you bring and your knowledge. Don't be afraid to draw that out of others. Do your networking, treat everybody with respect that you want to be treated with. And in the long run, I think it builds loyalty in a lot of relationships.
And then in terms of the people that you've had working with you in sales all these years, what was the message that you tried to convey to them from day one? In other words, when they joined you and you would kind of wanted to give them the lay of the land and saying, this is what we're expecting for you to do. Besides numbers, I'm talking about performance.
Yeah, no, my message to them is, right, be confident. You can do anything you want to do in the world. You just have to decide what you want to do. You want to be a really good salesperson, you want to move into leadership, you have to decide what your destiny is, and then you have to plan for that, on how you're going to get there. And you've got to utilize your resources, because none of us can do this on our own, right? And there's a lot of value. I always encourage people, take a look around you at GreatAmerica and the number of incredibly knowledgeable and skilled and experienced people that you have at your disposal here. And so utilize that, tap into people, right? Don't be afraid to get the help. I also tell them that they need to be themselves. I feel like a lot of individuals have this trait. Sometimes I feel like women are trying to be somebody they're really not, because they feel that there is this need to impress and be looked upon at a higher level. And that's not true, right? Be yourself, be who you are. That's what people appreciate and respect.
Well, I think that through the years, I've come to respect and admire you. And I think what you've just shared with our audience is very significant. And we appreciate you being here today.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity.